Welcome to the Brand Clarity Podcast, hosted by Visions to Images and Susie Libertor. The Brand Clarity Podcast highlights several different topics, including entrepreneurship, franchises, and digital marketing trends. Visions to Images helps corporations and franchises with their branding, website, paid advertising, and digital marketing.
Hello, everybody. Today on the podcast, I have Stephanie Ruby, and she is the Director of Franchise Development for BioOne. I'm excited to chat with her. We have some fun topics today about women in business and women in this industry. I never thought that a woman would be able to do it because I know I couldn't with blood and trauma and all that. So I'm excited to have her on. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a unique model, and for some reason, women are into it.
So tell me first kind of like how you got started in the franchising world.
Yeah, so I can't even believe where time has gone. So I fell into franchising 11 years ago after the birth of my first son. And so I was in retail weight loss for, 10 years, running different weight loss centers. I get pregnant. I didn't want the stress of the hours, and it's such a highly competitive industry, and I didn't want to manage people anymore. And the reality is, with the hours I was working, they didn't even have daycares open on weekends, right? And so I just needed more balance. So when I was on maternity leave, I was looking for a recruiter job because I was in weight loss so long that all I knew is I had a phone voice. That's it. That's all I knew. So I was click applying on Indeed for recruiter jobs. I get a call from a gentleman who's interviewing for what's called a franchise development role for a tutoring company. I'm like, all right, I'll meet with this guy. And so we're sitting there. He's like, yeah, no, you talk to people. And after a while, you make sure it's a right fit, and they make sure we're a right fit. And then they buy a franchise, and then they send in a check to the company. They used to manually, they used to have to ship contracts and checks in to an envelope back then.
Right.
Yeah. So that's how old school it is. I was like, I don't believe you. But I had weekends off and half day Fridays. I'd never had that. So I was like, sure, let's do it. So 4 years later, went really, really well. From there, I moved into a luxury pastry brand for a short time, did senior care for a bit, and then I fell into junk hauling and moving, went into pest control franchising, and most recently, BioOne. And so here's what I know about franchising and what I've learned between junk and bugs and biohazard and why I came here. The dirtier the job, the less the competition. And the reality is the more money there is to make. And so it's been a fun ride so far. So yeah, that's 11 years in a nutshell.
That's crazy. I don't think that I could do junk luggers. I mean, even as an owner, just making people pest control, all that is not me. So kudos.
Hauling industry.
Yeah.
Way more young too. And so maybe it's just because of who I connect with, women with young children, whatever it may be. But even in BioOne, if I were to guesstimate, I would probably estimate about half of our owners or locations are women-run locations.
Yeah, I remember us talking about that. Yeah.
Some of our most successful owners, women. We actually have a franchise owner. She went on our top producer trip last year. She was a stay-at-home mom for 18 years. Right. And so, and I think that just attests to the model's not difficult. It might not be pretty, but it's not difficult. Our home office up until recently was all women, except we just hired Nick, who's a great guy, former Navy. He's on board to be our business coach. But yeah, for some reason, women are into the biohazard business.
That's interesting. Why do you think so? And what do they kind of tell you when they come in?
I think it's the compassion component, right? Because people look at something like BioOne and we're crime scene, we do trauma, biohazard cleanup. And so I think a lot of the times people kind of get stuck on the ick factor of what we do. But the reality is when you hear our owners and when you listen to what they talk about, they don't talk about what they see. What they talk about is how they were able to help a family in need and how they were able to bring closure to people and how they were able to give a family their home back. So I think they really get drawn in by the compassion piece. I also think that the model is simple. Like, it is a simple model, and not pretty, but simple. But I think they get attracted to the compassion component of the business. Our whole motto is help first, business second. And we really do stand by that, leading with compassion, discretion, and care. So compassion is a big part of it. Community give back is another huge part of it. So our owners are highly integrated in the community, whether it's supporting victim advocate groups, local law enforcement, suicide prevention groups, hoarding support groups. And so I think it's just a combination of being able to give back, be involved, and the simplicity.
That's interesting. That's good to hear. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't see myself doing it. Even if I was the owner and I had people like going to the actual scenes, I don't know if I could do it. It's just not for me. But other women, it's inspiring to hear that they're doing it. And also, I think that there's a lot kind of happening where more women are becoming franchise owners and women in business and various different things. And I kind of get a little weird sometimes because men sometimes get intimidated by that too sometimes, right? And so it's like I want more women to succeed and have that women empowerment and be women in business. So I love that we're getting more traction on that overall.
I know. I think I can't remember the stat, but I remember last time I saw it was what I considered high, just franchise as a whole. I think, what is it, 40% of franchise owners now are women, something like
Yes,
that.
we're almost half, yes.
Yes. See, we're coming up. Yeah. So women are representing in the franchise industry. So I love seeing it. I would say, I mean, 11 years ago, I wasn't tracking that sort of stuff, but you
Right.
can see the difference between even then and
Absolutely. For sure. No, I think it's changed a lot over the years. Gosh, back when I was younger too, like women were just like kind of on the bottom, right? Be the stay-at-home mom, do the cooking, do the cleaning, do all of that. And now we want more than just fulfilling that need.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I look at it and like, well, I don't know. I have robot vacuums. They're like my favorite asset. And even when during COVID times when I was home with my kids for 3 months, I look back, I'm like, oh man, these
Right.
work. Even my
Agreed.
11, 8 at the times, like, you were the meanest teacher I ever had. I'm like, oh, I believe it. I believe it, buddy. So it's to each their own. And I don't know. I love working. And I know the cliche of if you love what you do, you're never going to work a day in life. But I don't know. What I do is really fun. I talk to people all day long. I get to know them, whether it's a fit or not. You're building relationships, people in their story. And then eventually, you find kind of that right fit and they come on board and they become an owner. And it's super, super rewarding to see. And it's almost like slight envy every time too. I'm like, oh, look, they have this opportunity now and they're going to go out there and they're going to crush it. So, yeah.
You mentioned relationships. So I know for one that relationships are key to success, no matter what company or business or what you're doing in life, right? And so how do you build relationships and what does that even look like for you?
So that's a really good question. So there's a couple of different places that I really focus building relationships, right? And so one, anytime I'm representing my company, I'm always going to be game on and respectful and present
Sure.
myself, have my organization. But so I've got relationships with franchise consultants and brokers, which is a huge part of my world. And so I've been doing that for years. And so there's that part. And, when I get to know consultants, we do a lot of travel, we're networking with them. And then from there, obviously, it's the candidate side and building relationships with them. And whether they become an owner or not, it's just making sure everybody has a positive experience. And one of my colleagues used to say, we either walk away as partners or we walk away as friends.
Right.
And so I think on each side, a big part of it is just listening. I think it's 80% of it. Hearing their needs, hearing what they're saying, caring about what they're saying too. What is that expression? People don't care what you know unless they know that you care. And I think that that's such a huge, huge part of it. But yeah, it's just consistency, I think, on the relationship side with consultants and brokers. But then really when it comes to my candidates is really, really listening and really feeling what they're saying and knowing how to read between the lines sometimes with what they say and what they mean. But yeah, so relationships are everything in franchising. You know that it's just.
I find, yeah, and I think that I find that kind of like hitting and being interesting and stuff. I work with many of different people as well. And a lot of times, they're like, oh, as franchisors, they're like, oh, we we don't work with brokers or consultants, or we're part of this organization and they're not introducing us to franchise brokers. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? What does your stuff look like? Like, why isn't there outreaching happening? You have to build, nobody's going to sell something for you if they don't either A, like the product and believe in you and know you. They're not going to sell it. And you have to build those relationships. And also, to that point, relationships take time. And they have so many, consultants have so many options to sell to people. And they really have to have that relationship built. And I think that's one of the things that people sometimes don't get in their head when they're a franchisor. They're like, oh, we're part of all these organizations, but they're not sending us leads. And I'm like, well, what can you do to get it? Do you know what I mean? And it's like, if they don't know the product, they can't sell it. Or if they don't know the person, etc. Right? So there's many factors, and you have to keep building that relationship. Find somebody you like, build it with that person, build it with the next person, keep building those relationships. Especially, I mean, you can be on 6 different brokers associations, and that's a lot. And there's so many people, and some might overlap and some might not. So which one is going to work best? Like, put together a strategy plan.
Yes, 100%. And you're like going back to it takes time.
Yeah.
The reality is, and what people don't know about me and what a lot of them don't believe, I'm a huge introvert, right? Like, so remember when I was looking for a recruiting job, it's because I thought I was going to get to hide behind the phone the rest of my life. But now we go to these conferences, and even though I've been going for years and we see a lot of the same people on the same circuit and consultants, again, it just takes time. But I remember walking into my first consultant conference all by myself. I was like, now I'm with a larger group with 5-star franchising, but back then it was just me. There was no pod. It was just, I was a solo developer. And so, but I remember just being 4 months pregnant, walking into the room for cocktail hour, not knowing a single person, and just being like, how am I going to survive the next 2 hours? And now I look at him like, gosh, 6 years later with my, I can track my time in development with my children, but just looking at him like, oh man, I actually know people now. Like I can walk into a room and people recognize me and I recognize them. And a lot of us are good friends now because we've been together and seeing each other at these things for so long. So yeah, it takes time. And I tell our franchise owners too, like you can't just go drop off business cards at a police station once and expect to get a return. Yeah. It's consistency, it's impressions, it's follow-up. The more people see you, the more they trust you, and the more likely they are to either refer you, use you, or work with you.
Yeah, even I like that. Even with franchise owners, like so many times people are like, oh my gosh, Google ads aren't giving us enough profit, or leads or whatever. And I'm like, okay, that's one piece of the puzzle. What else are you doing? Because you still need to get that traffic to the website and on Google, right? So if you're going into these different places and they, you gave them donuts or something, they're going to remember you and go look you up on Google and then want to build those further connections. But it's going to take time. It's not like, oh, the first time you come there, they're going to be like, oh, we love this guy. We're going to work with him. And
every single person. It was that easy. I could retire if it was.
Right? And you got to keep building and keep showing up and, really make it about, like you said, like helping others. Because if you're just coming in to sell, they're going to be like, oh, just another salesperson coming on in.
And I do that too when I'm in a consultant group. And if I don't know the consultants or if I'm joining a table of consultants I haven't met before, whatever, I'm like, I'm not going to pitch you. Like, I don't want to pitch you. I don't want to, like, I'm not here to shove information. I'm just here to get to know you. And if you want to work, we can figure that out later. Now, 80% of the time, I genuinely mean I'm not in the mood to pitch when I say that. But then on the flip side, whenever you kind of break down that wall and say, I'm not here to sell you anything, I can't tell you how many times people are like, well, then tell me about it. And I'm like, no, I really just wanted to eat. But it's all about relationships and it's all about consistency. And going back to what you said about the digital component, like Google AdWords, like the two work together. Like you can technically grow a business through online media alone, just like you can technically grow a business through ground tactics alone. But you put those two things together, that is going to be your quickest road to profitability. One simply lays the foundation of the other. And I'm so passionate about that outside networking component because one, as a small business owner, I think getting involved in the community is your responsibility. it creates that brand awareness that lifts up your Google AdWords and lifts up your website credibility. And it's local networking tactics are nothing but time. It's going to be the cheapest form of marketing you can do. And if you just do it consistently, it's going to be your most profitable. So I could sit on a soapbox and talk about that component all day long. Very passionate about the combination.
I agree. I always tell people, like, you can't just rely on Facebook or email or anything. You need to be doing a variety of things. Here's what you need to do. And you just give them the stuff. And if they need help or assistance, then that's perfect. Hey there, I want to interrupt this episode with a quick message. If you're listening to this podcast episode and want to learn about branding your franchise or small business, then go to brandingbridge.com. That's branding-bridge.com. But also, I like the fact, you talked about going to conferences and various things. I went to my first one last December, the FBA one, and I went on behalf of a client, but I still knew nobody. So I was in the same situation as you. Like, who am I going to talk to? What am I going to do for 3 days? I don't know these people. I don't know if they're going to buy from me. I don't know if they like me, right? Like, all of that stuff comes into play. I mean, I would probably be in the similar boat, saying I'm not always an introvert, and I kind of was an introvert, and then you get into sales and marketing and stuff, and you're like, okay, we got to break that shell, but I still need time to chill. So when I'm there, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many people to talk to. How do you find which one? What do you do? But I will say that out of the conferences, they're very nice. And I went to one, but I've never really had any issues where people were like, no, I don't want to talk to you, or stuck up, or, anything to that effect.
We've all been there. I love FBA. Like, I go back FBA.
Oh.
Gosh, it's 7 years.
Okay.
I think I've been going back with FBA. They're really good people.
Yeah.
And they're so welcoming and open. And they are actually probably one of the first conferences I went to.
Yeah.
I look for what I call my safety people. And so back then I would look for whoever had a very open, happy facial expression. Right. Now I try to be that person for people, because I know it's intimidating to walk into a room of 300 people where you know nobody. So look for my safety people. And then 8 years later, those safety people are still like really good friends, because
Oh yeah. Like, once you build those relationships, like we keep talking about, I mean, it's golden. And I mean, we did an exercise about aliens or something. It was crazy. But you remember those people that were on your team, and every now and then we'll be like, hey, remember that time, and just kind of like laugh about it. And those are not necessarily sales relationships, but they're relationships. You know what I mean? So it's like, they might not be able to buy or support me, but maybe you know what I mean? But you just never know. That's why those relationships are so key.
And I think the other thing too is because it's easy to walk in and be like, oh, they don't deal with what I do, that we may never work together. Why bother talking to them? The reality is the franchise industry is so small that just because I might sit with somebody and I might not be able to help with maybe their marketing, and I'm not the person that would be able to work with them or make decisions for my company with that sort of stuff. But I still might know somebody that if it comes up in conversation, I can be like, oh yeah, you should talk to so-and-so, because our
exactly.
Small. So creating, I think, consistency among relationships too, and just being, I don't know, decent to everybody, because that's what's going to get your reputation out. But again, it's also doing the right thing. And when you do the right thing happens, I think, in most fields. So.
Yeah, no, I love it. And yeah, I mean, they were all welcoming and all of that, but it was just like, when you go in there and you're kind of just like, oh, but no, it's good.
Well, the next one, I'm like the tallest female in the room at every conference almost. So just look up. I'll be there. I will. I'm always the tallest.
Awesome. So what is your number one way to get franchisees?
Consultant relationships. So we do have a mix, and I will say we have a solid franchise development department, franchise development marketing department. And so we're part of a larger platform organization called 5-Star Franchising. We have in-home service brands underneath our umbrella. And I will say, compared to any other model I've ever been with, what our Fran Dev marketing department does is phenomenal. The organic candidates that we get, I've just never seen the quality before. And so they handle that side of things. I really just consider myself kind of for lack of a better way to put it, a broker liaison. So I build relationships, and my goal is to just build relationships on behalf of my organization. I'm lucky I've been around long enough that I kind of have some relationships already in place. But the reality, that doesn't mean they know my brand. They might trust me, they might know me, but there's still always more relationships you can build. There's always more brand awareness you can create. And so for me, it's really just about getting in front of consultants and people who would want to work with my brand and educating them on my brand, because there's a lot of head junk around the biohazard space, right? And so just making sure they know exactly what our brand is and what our owners do, and the highs and the lows, and take down kind of that head junk. But for me, it's really just about getting in front of the brokers and the consultants to work with me and my organization. And sometimes it's also about making sure you want to work with them too.
Sure.
But that's 90% of my life is building relationships. Which again, I say that out loud, and it's still so weird for me because I am such an introvert that it's bizarre. I ended up in a world where I'm constantly trying to get in front of people, whether it's through conferences, follow-up emails, phone calls, whatever it may be. But yeah, so it's a split between 5-star franchising and their franchise development marketing department. And then from there, I really just, my goal is to get in front of brokers.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. Like I said, some people have mixed feelings about brokers, but I'm just like, you have to have everything in place, but brokers can really be beneficial if you make the right connections and you keep up with it.
100%. And the reality is, like, again, it's what they do on our behalf is, for me, it's worth it. I know I'm not the one cutting the check at the end of the day, but for me, the caliber of candidates they can bring you, as opposed to, even just with an organic, there's a lot of educating from the very beginning on, because it's not just why my brand and are you a fit for it, and vice versa. If you have somebody that is just first time looking at franchising, it's an education process that you also have to mentally prepare yourself for, as well as the candidate, everything from educating them on the benefits of franchising all the way through what is an FDD? What does it mean? Like, are you prepared to read an FDD? Because it can be a lot your first time. And so it's just a whole different ball game when you're starting with a candidate from scratch versus somebody who's come to you with that education already in place, which comes through the brokers and the consultants.
Yeah, I love it. Tell us why anybody should consider BioOne.
Yeah, it's a simple model. At the end of the day, our owners, all they do is hire and recruit people who are willing to clean and dispose of things that nobody else can, will, or should do. For us, the big component is the should do, because it's about preventing families from being re-traumatized by having to do it themselves. Owner activity, we have over 25 revenue streams. They're never limited to those revenue streams, nor do they ever have to take a job. But one of my colleagues always jokes that we do everything from fentanyl to feces, and genuinely everything in between. And so much financial opportunity, so many different revenue streams. We lift our franchise owners up through online marketing and media and get lead generation going that way. We have a call center that will answer phones for them after hours. We have all of the bells and whistles and support in place. So they just focus on their high payoff activity, which is making sure they have technicians. And then 2, going back to the keyword of the day, building relationships in their community, so that when there is an event or there is a trauma, when that yellow tape gets torn down, the first responder looks at the family and says, hey, you need to call BioOne. So I think that's like an hour-long presentation jammed into probably, I think I hit 6.
Oh, that was perfect. That was great. Yeah, I love it. Great. So if somebody wants to know more or connect with you, what is the best way?
Stephanie Ruby, BioOne, 813-416-6460. Give me a call. Believe it or not, it's a lot more, the model is a lot more fun than you would think based on what our owners do.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much. It was great to have you on.
Thank you, everybody, for listening in on today's Brand Clarity episode with Susie Liberatore. 2 things. First and foremost, please, if you liked this episode, please subscribe and leave some positive reviews. Also, don't forget to sign up for Stop Sending Your Customers to the Competition and get my insider secrets to compelling branding that converts. You can find that at branding-bridge.com. It's a free workbook for you to check out right now, all of the branding techniques and strategies that I use for my paying clients.